I think you will probably be happy to know that I do not have yet another Dharma talk to present. But there are a couple things that I would like to share. One of them, I think, given that this is our last session, I think it's important to make sure we have a little bit of time to sort of see if there's any unfinished business, or unfinished business, and not in the business sense, but in the sense of the sort of things that we've been talking about, because it wouldn't surprise me if over time questions, thoughts, issues have come to mind. So I think it'd be wonderful if we can incorporate that into this last session. So anything you want to raise about the arc of the weekend and what we've been talking about and thinking about. So creating the space for that. But first, I'd like to do something rather different. In fact, something I haven't done very much before, and offer a kind of guided meditation, but a very specific one. Because I wrote this book on Ecodharma, occasionally I receive emails or contact from people, and so often they ask me, yes, I want to be an eco-sattva. Please tell me what I should do. And even though I have said in the book and in the talks that the Buddhist tradition does not tell us what to do, still, they're turning and they're asking for some kind of Buddhist advice on this. And so and of course it's impossible, right? It's like everyone's situation is different. But what I've sort of thought of and come up with in response is a 3-part contemplation that can be very helpful for people to work out for themselves what they might do, where they might be most effective or find it most meaningful in their lives. And now this is something that I think needs to be done over time. I mean, it's not something we can do in the time allotted here, and we won't try to do it. It's something I think that should be sort of very gradually done. Sometimes people might want to do this even with like pen and paper on their side if something comes up and they want to take a note of it. Not only that, but I also realize this is something that can be done by groups. That if there are groups of people who are forming in a particular Dharma center or spiritual center, and they want to figure out, we're concerned, what should we do? I think this could be very powerful as discussion themes. People could spend a little time sort of meditating on their own and then come together and have some really valuable discussions, right? So what I'd like to do is offer a very abbreviated version of this, where we would just have maybe 5 to 10 minutes meditation on each of these 3 contemplations. And please reflect on this, whether this might be helpful to you, on your own path, but also whether it might be helpful, whether it's something you might want to find valuable to share with other people or even to do as a group, okay? So 3 contemplations, and here's the first one. What do I have to offer? And by asking that question, it invites us to take everything into account about our situation, right? Our skills, our profession, our health, our age, our network of friends and contacts. Are there people who depend upon me, and in what way? Am I retired? Do I need to have an income, or maybe I don't need to worry about money? So basically, this question is really the large question, thinking about the totality of our situation. what do I have to offer? And maybe the most important component would be, what kind of time do I have available to do this? So let's reflect on that for a few minutes. What do I have to offer? Five minutes or so. The second reflection or contemplation is, on the basis of what I have to offer, what are the good possibilities for me? I mean, these could be, given internet, etc., they could be national, working with a national or even an international organization. But it's also, especially if we want to work personally with people, they might be something very local. For those of us in Colorado, for example, fracking is a really big deal. Many of us are motivated by that. And of course, there are many, many other possibilities because there are so many issues, there are so many challenges, problems, right? At the same time, we know it's really important not to spread ourselves too thin, to sort of really ask what is something that we can focus on in a way that we might actually make a difference, which is not to deny non-attachment to results, but still, we do the best we can. So again, what are the good possibilities for me? That's the second reflection. So another 5 minutes or so, please. the third and final contemplation, having reflected on what I have to offer and what are the good possibilities for me, having digested those, as it were, put them on a shelf. This third and maybe most important question is of a different type. It's not about listing things pro and con, but rather going within and asking ourselves, what calls to me? What speaks to my heart? How does my love want to express itself? So this is where this is really the meditation, right? It's going within. It's not about a judgment in any rational sense, but it's opening up to something that's calling to us and getting in touch with that. So again, what calls to me? What's calling my love? Where does my love, my compassion, my engagement, how does it want to express itself? as I think you can probably tell, for this process to work well, takes a lot more time than we can devote to it. I mean, ideally, in my mind at least, I could see this as something that would, each question, each reflection could involve several days, not just meditating on it, but even sort of sticking it in your mind and then seeing what comes up over time. In other words, I don't think it should be hastened, but it should definitely be the opportunity for the different parts to become clear. And to say it again, I think it can also be very powerful for groups that are just forming and are wondering where to go and what to do. Yeah. Let me just ask, are there any questions, issues that come up in regard to this particular practice?
Could you repeat the questions one more time?
Sure. Number one, what do I have to offer? Taking into account everything about my situation. Number two, what are the good possibilities for me? And number three, what calls to my heart? What calls to me? What am I called to do? There was another hand up over here somewhere, please.
Say it again, please.
But behind you, there was a hand. Uh-huh.
We talked yesterday about engaging in the world. So I'm aware in this moment of my wanting to add another question or invite your reflections on what is the world calling me to do?
And insofar as we are non-dual with the world, maybe it amounts to the same thing. No, really, yeah. That overcoming this dualism that we otherwise so easily get caught up in. Yeah. Thank you for that. Any other concerns about the... I'm illuminated. Please.
Yeah, a question that comes up that interferes with the full contemplation of these questions is, and it's an issue I'm particularly concerned with, who is my teacher? And I've had so many people in these convocations in other places who have said, well, I'm not a teacher. I'm not an official teacher. I haven't been certified, etc. And it ignores the broader aspect that everybody is a teacher of something. If I'm talking to a 5-year-old, he's an expert in his life at that point, and I can learn something from that. So I think we need to address this issue more directly in the UU Buddhist Fellowship, because it's a barrier that sits in the way of answering these 3 questions. And I think not that you have to come to an absolute conclusion, but a full contemplation of this topic, I think, is part of this effort. My experience in Thailand, I met some teachers who didn't claim to be teachers, and they were officially trained and so on, and they preferred spiritual friend rather than teacher, and I think that's a different atmosphere it creates between the 2 people.
And I think that's actually something we may be moving toward in the U.S., that in Asia, which traditionally I think is more hierarchical, less democratic, the teacher-student role tends to be quite formalized. And I think more and more here it's Kalyana Mitra, the spiritual friend model, rather than to avoid some of the hierarchy. But if I could just extend that one little bit, is it only people that are teachers, or can we say that situations are also teachers, including the kind of situations that we will encounter when we try to engage? When we begin to engage, situations will happen. And it's not simply about us contributing what we can, but we're going to find that we have an awful lot to learn from what happens. Right? You remember yesterday I quoted Ram Dass. So you think you're enlightened, huh? Well, go spend the holidays with your family. Thank you, Judy. Go spend, it's like spending the holidays with your family may be the best teacher or one of the very best teachers you ever have. And so I think being open to every situation. So it's definitely not going to be a case, as I think we know, where, I'm going to really help solve this situation and I have something to offer. It's going to be very, very much interactive, and usually we have as much or more to learn from the situation than we have to offer. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Maybe.
Others, yeah.
Sorry. So maybe open it up. Sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
You have more to say? I'm having some trouble tracking, I guess, this morning.
No, I was just thinking if there's somebody who wants to follow up specifically on the meditation, we can do that, but also maybe this is a good time to open it up. If there are other issues, thoughts, reflections, maybe move. This is our last opportunity together. And I have to say, this has been a wonderful group experience. And, let's enjoy it to the full, to the end. So.
Thanks. I'll follow up a little bit on Alan's comments because it kind of started at our breakfast table a little bit, what he led into. One of the things that I think I struggle with a bit when I considered all of the possibilities for where my contributions could find an outlet and a commitment is I look at some of the climate action organizations that I'm aware of, and some of them that I already receive emails from, and I'm aware of their work together in the Mid-Atlantic and in my local community in Charlottesville, where I'll eventually settle. I recognize that one of the things about the situations that I encounter there is people being involved in these organizations from a lot of different backgrounds, perspectives, spiritual practices, commitments, and the diversity of people that get involved in itself presents challenges as far as decision-making together, prioritization. It's a challenging sort of Dharma gate situation to bring my practice to. So that's one of the things that came up in response to his question about who is my teacher. Some of the people who are leaders, who are often very secular in these organizations, are certainly my teachers, but there is something that when I ask the question, what do I have to offer? I do have my practice and what I've learned in my practice to bring into those secular organizations that are active in climate advocacy, climate rescue advocacy. So I hold that up as a comment in response to Alan's remarks. The question I would like to ask David, and I might have missed this because the talk that I had to go and attend to some personal business around, and I missed a part of, had to do with the Ecodharma Center in Boulder, near Boulder. Have there been a single issues or a series of projects that your center has focused on for group action? You might have talked about that. One of the things about congregations that many of us participate in, that's always an interesting challenge, is do congregations narrow down the focus of what they will do in justice work, or is it like anybody who wants to lead is running off in all directions at the same time? So I was interested in what your center has done, if you have a common project.
Very, very good question, thank you. And maybe I can respond or follow up to the first part of what you said as well. I think that really connects with the main theme of last night, which is that the most important thing I think that the Buddhist tradition has to offer in relation to the ecological crisis is the idea of the Bodhisattva path, which is to say the importance of integrating the personal practice, the personal transformation, so that we're not simply out there, but we're understanding this interaction between the two, working on ourselves, on our own insight, personal development, and the engagement in social issues, ecological issues that goes along with that. And if you think about the environmental movement or the ecological movement as a whole, where is that emphasis coming in, you see? And that seems to me the real power of the Buddhist perspective, that it's not just a matter of going out and trying to fix the world, but realizing that in a way we have to fix ourselves in the process. Or that cartoon that I love so much that I've quoted a couple times, the world doesn't want to be saved, it wants to be loved, right? That's how we save it. And who's emphasizing that? I think this may be where Buddhism has something a lot. What am I trying to say? I think this is where what Buddhism has to offer is maybe most distinctive and most special, because I'm not aware other groups are emphasizing this to the same degree. Yeah. Regarding the Ecodharma Center, it's actually a very small place, started by just a couple of us coming together. We don't have a resident staff and we don't have a resident community. We don't have the facilities. All we have during the season, from April through November, is a resident manager. So it's not as though we as a community do things together. The way it functions, the way it has to function, we're very much shoestring. We just kind of pooled our money to get the mortgage, etc. People rent the center for a weekend or a week, teachers, groups, and then they'll take turns doing that. And not all of them, by any means, are focused on what I consider Ecodharma. Our hope over time is that more and more of the groups are doing that. But for some of them, it's just a beautiful place out in the natural world to meditate, which is fine. So the other side of that is, for us as a community, well, in a way, it's not that kind of a community. And even the people on the board were coming from a number of different traditions and are doing different things. For example, as I might have mentioned, I've been involved with Extinction Rebellion, and got arrested in Denver for blocking a road, that kind of thing. So some of us are more interested in civil disobedience than others. And so we really haven't formed that kind of a community. It's more of a resource center where people can come and practice together and learn. But then for the most part, people tend to go back home and scatter and then sort of do their own thing. What has been good is that more and more recently, as a result of those retreats, people are wanting to keep in touch. And you know how that works, it's right. Sometimes you go to a retreat and you exchange emails, and after a while, usually, people are busy. It doesn't necessarily lead to much. But what I'm noticing is that people are feeling more, they want to keep in touch with the people that they went through this experience together. And this leads a lot of times to online stuff. But because people are scattered, more often it means something like a discussion group, reading a book together, rather than the actual activism. So in a way, it falls back into the traditional Buddhist role of sort of educational or personal development. But in terms of actually doing things together, people have gone off in different directions and are doing different things. Yeah. Terry?
I also wanted to mention along with that, there are the monthly talks that if you're a member of the Rocky Mountain Ecodharma Center, they have a monthly talk primarily around Ecodharma issues.
That's right.
That's really quite good by a variety of different teachers. Plus, I think all of the teachers, or many of the teachers who go to the Rocky Ecodharma Center have a daily sit that they sit, and at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time.
Right.
That's also available. So there is a broadening of that, a continuation of what's happening at the Dharma Center in at least those two ways to keep people connected.
Thank you. So basically what we're trying to do is not just be a local center, but as much as possible, not just see the Ecodharma Center as the only locus, but as that's one venue. And our larger vision, our larger concern for those of us on the board is sharing the Ecodharma vision in the way that I've been trying to do. Thank you for the plug for the morning sits, since I'm doing one of them. If you're interested, every Friday morning, well, when I'm home, when I'm available, I'm leading a sit at 9 o'clock Midwestern time, and it involves a 35-minute silent meditation followed by a little dharmet. Well, I will give a 5 to 10 minute little dharma talk about something or other that's on my mind. So, and everyone's welcome, and if anyone's interested, I can give you the link of, and there's 7 of us who take turns. Yeah.
I know there's a question in the back, just to follow up though briefly before we go to Jeff. There's something about sitting in this front row with Alan's questions that's stimulating stuff. So I just wanted to throw a comment out there
There's also a question
before
behind you too, Judy.
we shift gears. Yeah,
I have one
thinking
online
about,
too.
Who's a teacher? Who's qualified to be a teacher? And I was at a retreat recently where we were talking about antidotes to the afflictions and applying them. I had to share it, and not that I do this all the time, but it's an aspiration that when I'm around someone, especially in activist work, one of my things that gets me going are the angry activists. There's a righteousness and an anger that will arise when we're doing even work to protect this earth that many of us dearly love. And I'm glad I've had an occasion or two in my life, I hope there will be more, where when I feel anger arising around someone specifically, situations definitely, I try to say, thank you for being my Dharma teacher, quietly to myself. I just keep that refrain going, and it sort of turns the tables to make it a little different, that situation. What are they teaching me? What can I learn about myself and that person by doing that flip? Because as I heard you have said repeatedly this weekend, it's our practice is what we bring to the work. And I keep looking back on it's not this issue, that issue, this issue, that issue that's important to me. What's important is how I do the work. What's the energy? What's the intention? And that little Dharma teacher flip. I gotta remember that the next time I'm at a meeting, on whatever, and I have that ick arise that says that it's one of those poisons beginning to erupt in me. That's my Dharma teacher right there. There they are. And how can I bow to them quietly, silently inside myself? Okay, Jeff.
Thank you, Judy.
Can you expand on how Extinction Rebellion works in general and what opportunities might be there for someone that's interested?
Yeah, Extinction Rebellion started in England, and and I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's actually within that movement, which is now very big and very international, there's also a very large Buddhist component. There are Extinction Rebellion Buddhists in England, very strong, and also in the US, especially in the New York area, and I think Boston. And we actually had an Extinction Rebellion eco-activist retreat at the Ecodharma Center a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, where most of the people attending were XR, Extinction Rebellion. And they do a number of things, and they've sort of evolved. At one time, it involved sort of, let's stop business as usual. And so we blocked the road in Denver as a way of protesting fossil fuel consumption. And likewise, they've done a lot of very big demonstrations in England, especially in London. But it's evolving, they're trying to figure out one, I think, very hopeful direction. Rather than bothering people inconveniencing people, which may or may not be the best way to spread your message. I really think we all know about the problem of flying and emissions, but especially the private jets of the multimillionaires, and this is just obscene when you look at how much so I'm fully in favor of, and I may well become involved with blocking the private jets of the ultra-rich, and as a way of protesting. I have a background as a draft resistor during the Vietnam War, so I really think that nonviolent civil disobedience can really play a role, and that would, I think, be valuable in helping to raise the profile that part of the problem is this incredible gap between rich and poor. Right? There was a 20-year period when the top 1% of the world's people were responsible for twice the carbon emissions of the bottom 50%. We need to keep that in mind, that the ecological crisis very much feeds into the plutocracy that's evolved, and that we have to address that as well, which I think XR is trying to do. But specifically, you would need to contact the local people, the local XR people in your area, and find out what they're up to.
I've got, Judy, I have somebody online.
Is there someone online?
Yes,
Oh, good.
I have somebody online. I have someone online, and I'm going to.
While we're accessing that, if you go to the website of the Ecodharma Center,
If you could
there are some interviews with
unmute,
XR Buddhists that you can
and we'll
listen
see if we can make this work.
in English.
Do you want to unmute? I see a hand, but. Oh, here she comes. Go ahead. All right. If you want to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, David. Thank you. I can't tell from David's expression whether he can hear me.
Can you hear? Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes? Is this better? Okay. Now, there's an echo. I apologize. I'll do the best I can do. David, I appreciate the contemplation. It allowed me to imagine and feel love and connection, to take in the beauty of the outdoors, feel hopeful. And then I began to.
I'm not able to hear something.
Maybe in the chat?
Yeah, it's the same problem again, I'm sorry to say.
You know, I test this right before we speak, and then it's frustrating.
Would it be possible to ask
Could
them to type it in the chat? And
Yeah.
Maybe, I know that takes longer and it's not as nice.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Or can you hear it, Sam, and then
Tell us.
Well,
I like that.
yeah. I think it's going to be hard.
Okay, maybe we'll, I know there's.
It's very frustrating.
I really think the best might be to, if they can put something in the chat, even
Yeah.
if it's not.
Okay.
But maybe in the meantime, we can go. There's one over here.
Okay.
Okay, lots happening here. Wayne is being an excellent timekeeper before we go to a question here, am I right? That we're a little bit after 10 o'clock, so let's take this question here and hopefully we can get some resolution for our online questionnaire, and I think we'll have to draw this part of our time together this morning to a close.
So, dear beloved teacher and beloved community, I also have been very nourished by the teachings, and this morning in particular, I think part of the reality is as our container is preparing to break, there's a lot of energy, right? Because the pattern has been a back and forth pattern, and now we're trying to like, oh my gosh, we have so much wisdom in the room, we have so many people we want to connect with, so I think that's a natural part of our cycle, and we don't have to let it end here, right? So we don't have to let it end here. I was thinking about the teacher question. I come from Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, so we're in a really interesting place because Thai passed away 2 years ago, and I'll be with the larger community in about a week. But the other thing that I was really sitting with was, are we an organization or are we a network? Or are we an organization or are we a movement? Or a movement of movements? I know for me, I'm part of a movement. And that frame, while I'm part of organizations as well, it brings my agency and my authority right back into my body. So I don't need permission to take a step forward if I'm doing it grounded in deep respect for my ancestors, spiritual and blood and chosen. And it came up in a very simple way, just being confronted with the conditioning this morning when my new neighbor whispered to me, are we going to do some singing? And I said, yeah, I think we're going to offer some songs during the worship from this time to this time. And she said, well, what if we just start it now? And right away, I felt joy and, oh my God, we don't have permission. Right? And I love to sing. And actually, in my tradition, singing is the way you call people together. So it's so deep, this conditioning. And for me to think, I don't have permission, or it won't be respectful, or somebody else has an agenda, it's the ever active tension of how do we be in a community, be in the world, but also trust that we take one step forward or 2 steps forward, and then we just check in. Where am I? Where's the world? And how is this, interaction of personal transformation and global transformation, like present right now? So I'm very, very grateful, and let's be courageous.
How's our online questioner?
I think we've given up.
Okay.
I think it is time to move on. Excuse me, but I also quickly want to offer first kind of a personal plug. As you could probably tell, I enjoy talking about these kind of things, right? The talks I made. And I just want to mention, basically a lot of my teaching now is online, Zoom, where people contact me and they ask me to give a talk on this or that. And I just wanted to mention that if you're connected with groups, if you know the kind of thing I have to say, and if you know groups that really would like to hear this, if I'm available, I'm really I try to be responsive to that. So pardon this personal plug, I don't mean to put myself forward, but I just want to say that I'm open to that possibility. I also had these eco-sattva vows from Joanna Macy. Should we save those for later, or do you think it's suitable?
Oh, this now is good.
Yeah. I don't know if people are familiar with them. They come from one of her last books, and they're not vows that we need to take together, especially if we don't know them. But let me just read them briefly so we have a sense, because I think they're very powerful. As she says, vow, the whole attitude of taking a vow and being determined to live up to it can be very powerful. So she has these 5 eco-sattva vows. I vow to myself and to each of you to commit myself daily to the healing of our world and the welfare of all beings. I vow to live on earth more lightly and less violently in the food, products, and energy I consume. I vow to draw strength from the living earth the ancestors, the future generations, and my brothers and sisters of all species. I vow to support others in our work for the world and to ask for help when I need it.
Wow.
Finally, I vow to pursue a daily practice that clarifies my mind, strengthens my heart, and supports me in observing these vows.
Thank you.
We'll have to find a location for those vows, only in the sense that as some of for our retreat follow-up, as I get my notes here. Go ahead, Simone.
Why don't you send them out, Judy? Can you-
We can share those with you, those vows.
I can give this.
I know what, yeah.
Put 'em in
We'll
there.
find a way to get those out to you to use them in your practice. I know one of the things they ask those of us who have taken the formal bodhisattva vows, that we say them twice a day, morning and evening. So there's an opportunity here for you to go further on the bodhisattva path. And just abundant thanks and gratitude. I can't say enough to David for all that he's brought us this weekend. Well, let us continue the work of the UU Buddhist Fellowship. Part of taking this forward is to keep this organization thriving. We've been around for, God, how long? 25 years? I know I have some of our board members have long tenures with this organization. So let's do what we can to keep things moving forward. And one of those things is we have an issue of the UU Sangha coming out. Wanting to come out in summer, Florence? Yeah, so just want to affirm that we would love your submissions, or Florence would love your submissions, and she's our editor.
I offer my email address.
Yeah, tell us your email address. Yeah.
So we're going into our business meeting?
Yes, we'll do a short business meeting and then we'll take a short break for worship.
So so I'm going to ask that we not have a super long time after the end of this event to get things to me, because it'll just be in the past then and it won't happen. So if you could try to get something to me in this month of May, that would be great. Anything that you want to share. And it's very simple. It's just fcaplow, my name, at uuma.org. And just send me what you have, and that can include photos, poetry, little reflections, something that's come up for you. That would be awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, and as I
C-A-P-L-O. C-A, so it's F, Florence, for Florence, C-A-P as in Peter, L-O-W, at uuma.org. And we'll send this out in an email, but you might not read your email, so this way you've got it in your notes.
Yeah, I just await with delightful anticipation for that issue, because we can, it reaches the joy of being together when we read that issue that you contribute to. Let's see here. We have a Facebook group, do we not?
Yes.
We do. And if you're not part of our UU Buddhist Fellowship Facebook group, find us on Facebook if you are on Facebook and just ask to join. There's a couple of us administrate that. We'll have you come on in. That's also a good place, in addition to the sangha, to post anything you want about this weekend. There's already been a couple of pictures put up there. So when you go out of here after this morning, put that out there so folks know of the important work that you've been part of this weekend and what you've experienced. Let's see here. We also have some evaluations that I want to alert you to. You'll get something in the email that you use to register for this conference in the next week or so. And we need your feedback, very much so. One of the things that the board is going to be doing in the fairly near future, once we catch our breaths, is debriefing about this gathering, and we need your feedback, because we have another convocation to plan. We do these every 2 years, and there's some early planning that we have to do. So we would like your feedback so that we can continue to offer this important programming that we do. And thinking now about programming up ahead, we have some of us going to our annual General Assembly. It's virtual, definitely, and it's also in person in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I hear rumor that Sam Trumbore, there's Sam, you know Sam, he's there. And if you're online with us, Sam's been someone you've gotten to know behind the scenes as our tech host. So Sam is going to get the word out to have a meetup at General Assembly, face-to-face if you're going to be there. And I'm not going to put it up to Sam, but